come and share his part with our students. So what happens at the breakfast is really an informal chat where you tell them why you got into science, who are your mentors, and the challenges. It's especially important to not sugarcoat it. Like you have been paid a lot of money now, but life was not all that. We have different groups here. We have our usual IMSD prep that you met, and then there are a few students that are coming in from Dr. Grayson's shop. They call Carver, that you are familiar with very much. He worked in the Carver building at Tuskegee. So for those of you who were not at his seminar yesterday, he got his undergraduate degree at Tuskegee. I knew him when he was a high school student working in that building. He was a Carver researcher technically. And the lab that he worked in was really a plant molecular biology lab. And he had Carver's picture where. So for the Carver scholars that are here, the IMSD scholars don't recognize, they work with Dr. Grayson. He actually made me come here because when I interviewed, I had lunch with him, and I said, well, in addition to the nice trails for running, I have somebody who's doing something that I like doing. So anyway, Emmitt, it's yours.
Thank you very much, again, for the nice introduction. It is a pleasure to be here, and it's wonderful to see so many lovely faces. I think I've been in the position you've been in. But what I'll try to do is, I'll try not to sugarcoat a few things, and kind of give you an idea about the trajectory that I took. In terms of the invitation, I really am very pleased to be here. The only mistake you made was a successful part, because I don't consider myself successful yet. I'm still struggling with finding out where I want to go and what I actually want to do when I grow up. So, but what's interesting, that something that Ed might not know, is that before I went to Carver Research Foundation to do research, I had actually worked for multiple years prior to that. One, I'm large for my age, so I started working when I was 11. I happened to go for a summer to Georgia. I grew up in Alabama, just outside of Tuskegee. And my dad's pretty much a pastor. He does work as a maintenance man, but his passion is the ministry. And so I was a preacher's kid whose job was to go to church every day of the week. And at this point, I think I've done enough church to get all of you guys in heaven. So, that being said, I got my first job at 11. Went to stay with my uncle in Georgia. I looked older, and so I told the guy I was 14. Got a job working in a tobacco field, doing what's called suckling tobacco, which some people here might know about. At first, they tried to get me to do this job where you sit on a truck, you snatch the leaves off the bottom, and I was just a little too slow for that. So I began to sucker tobacco, which is taking off the small leaves and flowers off of the top to make the leaves on the tobacco larger. Eventually, a couple of weeks later, my dad found out that I was working in a tobacco field, and was not very happy about it because he didn't support cigarette smoking, and so he made me quit. So that was my first job that I got on my own. The next job I got was in Alabama. I started working in a cotton field, which you think, God, how old are you, man? And it's the funniest thing, because when I talk to older people about the experiences, they'll say, boy, you don't know anything about hard work. You ever worked in a cotton field? I go, yes. What about, we did some backup. Me too. I even picked peas. And after that, we were pretty much on the same footing. So I worked in a cotton field for 2 years. The first year we had droughts. The second year we had floods. While I was out there, just to give you an idea of the area, I'm the only light-skinned guy out there. There was a lot of drama. There was a white guy who sat out in the truck. His name was Bud Segrist. And Bud would sit there with his gun, he or one of his sons. And so there was one incident that they had, because they had a big thing of water that you were supposed to go to. And here it is in the 1990s, and you had a dipper that everyone had to go and drink out of the same dipper. Well, I didn't necessarily grow up in a dipper generation. And so I'm not trying to drink the dipper after everybody else is drinking. I mean, people have bumps and stuff on their mouths. And And so the entire first day, I drank no water. It was 130 degrees. Went for lunch, and I was like, I'm getting some water, but I didn't have anything to put it in. So I drank water, just drank a bunch of water, my bologna sandwiches for lunch, and went back to work. And at 5 o'clock when I went back, I just gargled up. And then I went, got me a container like, Dad, I need something to bring some water in. The people got upset with me with the idea that I didn't want to drink after it, and so they started pouring my water out. And actually the first day I did something, the second day I did something really stupid, which is, why get water when I can bring Kool-Aid? Let me tell you. Don't ever do that. I was more thirsty drinking Kool-Aid than any time I'd ever so. But they poured my stuff out, and so then of course people wanted to fight me, and here I am, the one light-skinned guy out there, and now you got the traditional light-skinned, dark-skinned thing, and I'm going, what in the world did I just get myself into? So all of a sudden I'm sitting out there with Bud, and Bud's out there, with his shotgun, and boy, got any problem? There's this stuff in this. Got any problems out there, boy? I say, no, I'm just trying to, do my job and so and so and so. Don't like the water getting spilled out. He said, well, you seem like a good boy. I can fix it for you. I said, what do you mean? Just, I can get rid of them. You won't have a problem anymore, boy. I said, well, I didn't expect you to get rid of a problem. That's not what I had in mind. I said, why do you sit out here with this gun? He said, just to make sure y'all don't get too hungry. So this is my first 2 years of working with Bud. The second year, they had floods, and I got a job at a truck stop, working at, look, and I think, Ed, you may know where that truck stop is, at exit 22 in Shoreline. Got a job at the truck stop, and I love the job. Why? It was in the air conditioning. Worked there doing changing truck tires. I went there as a janitor, so doing the water. Before you know it, I was doing stock. Before you know it, I was doing the dishes. Next thing you know, I was busting tables. And basically, I ended up doing everything. Happened to be another lady a young lady who was right next to me at a fireworks place, my second year working there. And it was around the second year working there that I ended up getting interested in, I won't say getting interested in science, but I ended up being in a summer program, which is another story by itself, how I got into the program. Lady over there in the fireworks station was a white girl who was around my age, and here we are, only two young people around these other people working. Her parents owned the fireworks place, and so we ended up talking every now and then. And so one day for lunch, I go over there, and I'm going, yeah, how's your summer going, so-and-so, and ate my lunch, and then I head back. And as I'm going back to work, the guy at the truck stop looks at me and he says, Emmitt, where we at? I said, I was out eating lunch. He said, where'd you go for lunch? Out. He said, did you go over to the fireworks place? I'm going, this is really weird. Oh, yeah. Is Heather over there? Heather was a white girl, by the way. Is Heather over there? Yeah. And he goes, we don't need your services anymore. That was I was fired. First job I ever lost, only job I've ever been fired from. Now, that was a little bit shocking for me, but the reason I didn't care about it was because that same summer, I just switched to working only in the weekends at the truck stop. And I had just gotten a job working at Tuskegee University as a summer student. And I got this job, and I walked into the job, I was in a cytogenetics lab, and I walked to the lab, and a guy named Dr. Williams, John Williams, walks in, he gives me these theses to read. I'm 15 years old. And he says, now keep in mind where I just left Cotton Field Truck Stop, etc. And he goes, okay, I want you to read these theses. I go, but what do you want me to do? He says, I want you to read these theses. And I'm going to get paid for that. And he said, yeah. And I said, so let me make sure I understand what is really going on here. I'm getting paid to learn. And he goes, I never thought about it like that. But yeah. So after reading 6 theses, I came up with an idea. We were working on we were working on cytogenetics. I'd read several of these theses, and I think at this point I got a general idea of what was going on. So I asked him, I had this idea, they've been trying to G-bank proliferate kidney tumor cells from these leopard frogs, random kidneys. And I said, you know, they haven't been able to get these G-bands to work, these stains to work, these cytogenetics, and I said, I have an idea of how it might work. And he looks at me, you know, imagine some high school kid walks up to you and says, look, you know what you've been trying to do for the last 3 years? I think I can do it. You know, okay. Yeah. He said, why don't you go ahead and work with the technician and, you know, we'll see how it goes. Next day it worked. He comes up and he's in shock. He's like, hold it, people have been trying to get this done for years. How'd you come up with it? And I said, well, it was in the thesis already. They had already done all the work. They just need to do the next set of experiments. And at that point, things ended up being to my advantage because now I was working in a program by a guy named James H. Henderson, who was really my mentor. He's the person who really got me into biology in the first place. I never wanted to do biology. I wanted to do engineering. Biology was too expensive. Engineering, I could build stuff with my own hands. And so afterwards, he suggested that I work with him, got into a NASA seeds project doing these space tomatoes. So when the Challenger went up before the Challenger went up to space, they took some tomato plants and things up to space, the seeds, and the Challenger was supposed to bring them down, but it exploded. So they stayed up there for over 6 years. I got those tomato seeds and I started doing cytogenetics. And this is where I ended up meeting Ed after this, because the next thing he said, well, after I'd done all of these radiation studies in cytogenetics, it was, well, now you need to do molecular biology. It's like, I don't know anything about DNA. And so I started learning molecular biology under a guy named, by the name of Dr. Prakash, who I think had come here in some
Yes, last year.
last year. So this is the guy that I began learning molecular biology from. And I spent a lot of time in a room with a molecular biology book and a blackboard learning how DNA works and replication works and all of these things. And ended up doing well identifying issues associated with the NASA seed project. Start undergraduate at Tuskegee. Absolutely loved going to Tuskegee. I will not underestimate how much, did I say I loved going to Tuskegee? Okay, just trying to say that. During this time, and I think some of you, I'm just gonna try to catch up to where people are. During this time, I spent every summer working in summer programs. My first summer, after my freshman year, I went to University of Alabama, Birmingham, doing biochemistry, studying Bacillus diseases. My second summer, I went to the University of California, San Francisco, and I'll tell you a little bit about this. I went to Birmingham. I had a girlfriend at the time. So I didn't really want to go to Birmingham. I was going to actually go somewhere else, but she ended up, the only place she got accepted was UAB. And so, like a good, faithful dumb boyfriend, I decided I would follow her there. And it was on a project I really wasn't that interested in. I spent most of the time depressed because she was right across the door from me. We broke up, and here I'm stuck in Birmingham for the summer, and she's over there. I'm on this side. We didn't go. Yeah, long story. At that point, I was like, I'm never following anybody anywhere. Next summer, I had a buddy of mine, a guy named Solomon Gilbert. He was wanted to pre-med, and we were both applying to go to NYU. Joel Oppenheim ran a summer program there, and kind of recruited people for MD, PhD programs, etc. Solomon and I also applied to a couple of programs there and San Francisco, etc. Solomon did not get accepted to the program at NYU, which was the program that we were going to do together. And so I said, why not? I'm going to California. I'll only get to go one chance anyway. It's going to fall to earth, so I'll go and enjoy it. I went to San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco, and I had this research experience, and I thought I was pretty big stuff. I met this lady named Erin O'Shea, young faculty, and she goes, she started the program. I started early because I was very upset about the last summer program. So I came 4 weeks early to this program to get it started. I was like, you don't have to pay me extra. I just want to come and get this stuff started because this summer's going to work. Last summer was a bust. I get there this summer, meet Erin O'Shea, young lady, she's probably 30 years old, new faculty member, etc. She asked me to tell her about my research experiences, so I go through all this stuff, NASA seeds project, molecular biology here, go through these details, my batch work, and she looks at me and she says, okay, now that I understand you have an understanding of basic molecular biology, let me introduce you to modern molecular biology. Like, whoa, that was not the response I was expecting. Summer started, and literally she changed the way I thought about science. For the first time, I stopped looking at individual small parts of a project and looked at the entire project from a big picture. After the summer, by the end of the work, I basically demonstrated, one, how phosphorylation was required for transcriptional regulation in response to environmental phosphate. inside these cells. Not only that, the work from that was the first time that we figured out how phosphorylation was required for nuclear translocation across the membrane for a transcription factor to induce expression of a gene. So this would have been, eventually this came out in Science, 1996 paper, and here I was now, senior year of college, and I got a science paper.
You know, it was a big deal at Tuskegee.
But which brings up another point, which is you have to be very cautious about your environment. And so here I had just gone to this huge environment in the University of California, and the difference is that it's a place where all the professors wore jeans and t-shirts, or jeans and jackets. One professor runs around, and actually, you're gonna love this, he dresses in drag when he teaches. And the culture is different. And so for the culture there, it is not about what you look like, but more about how well you can defend and talk about your science. So you get these weird looking people who are brilliant. And it's just a culture of the area. That being said, I go back to Tuskegee. I just been around these people who I met Nobel laureates, I met members of the National Academy, which I didn't know even what that meant. And I go back and I'm happy because I feel I've learned so much. And then I ran into a problem because I go to give my senior talk. I don't have a shirt and tie on. Or rather, I don't have a tie on. And the chair of the department at the time tells me I go to give this talk, and he tells me you will not give your senior talk without a tie on. I'm thinking, but I have a suit on, I'm ready to give my talk, and he said it will not happen. So I had to run a mile to my dorm, get a tie, come back, and then I gave my talk. And I gave my talk the way I had been trained to give talks, which is you just talk. And afterwards he came to me and said, you're extremely arrogant. The fact that you gave your talk with no notes. And so now I'm going, I can't win. So at that point I realized that I have to understand which environment I'm in, and you adapt to whatever that environment is. So now shift to where some of you are now. I applied to graduate school, and in the process of applying to graduate school, I was dumb. So I get this job offer from Merck, and I'm thinking $40,000, that's a lot of money, particularly at the time. But I don't want to necessarily do this. There's another story, which is I was also getting groomed to be, I did a lot of speaking, occasionally for the state senator and state representative in Alabama. And so I was being groomed to be senator. And there's a whole story for why I didn't go into politics. But in the end, I decided to go to graduate school. I applied to 2 schools, and it wasn't out of arrogance, it was out of stupidity, because I didn't know that you're supposed to apply to a certain number of schools. And number 2, I didn't have the money to pay for all the applications that you needed to pay for. So I applied to 2 schools, one on the East Coast in Boston, and the other one in San Francisco. And in the end, I turned one down and went to the other one. And so I went to UCSF for graduate school. And I get there, and the moment I get there, a lady comes up, and I skipped my whole Cold Spring Harbor laboratory experience. A lady who I know goes, you don't even deserve to be here. There are better students than you who should have been picked to do this program. And I'm going, whoa, whoa. I was the first African American in the PhD program there. So here's a tetrad program, been around for a very long time. It's the #1 program in the country. And here it is, 1996, fall of 1996, and the first black guy was me. I get there, I start taking these classes, and I will not joke, these classes kicked my butt. The first class was biochemistry. Now I take in biochemistry at Tuskegee, and I enjoyed taking it with Dr. Donna, but the biochemistry they taught was not the biochemistry that I learned. I walked in there, and they started talking about techniques and these experiments and how they work and so and so, and I walked, after about 3 weeks, I walked up to Ron Vale, who's an Academy member, he showed how microtubules grow and get shortened. And I said, Ron, because everybody's on first name basis, Ron, you know, this is really great, what you've been teaching. I really enjoy it. But can you tell me when we're going to get to the Krebs cycle and citric acid and stuff? So, because I memorized that stuff, when are we going to get to that? And he looked at me and said, at UCSF, we don't memorize pathways, we develop them. I was like, when do I go home? This is a lot more than I was prepared to deal with. And it blew me away And literally, that was the mentality of graduate school. No, we don't memorize anything. We develop new science. We make new science. But then there's the culture part, right? And don't get me wrong, just ask me a question whenever you want to. So, I'll give it mine. Yeah, okay. Then there's a culture. Growing up in Alabama, there's a certain white, black kind of line that's there that you really don't cross. Like, for example, you get trained, never go drinking with white people. Why? Because when they do something stupid, you go to jail. And you can ask, how many times has this happened? Quite often. So over time, you have this drilled in, and then also when it gets to be nighttime, you go home. Don't hang out, because you get in trouble. Graduate school. I'm the first black person in the program. Guess what everybody wants to do? Drink. Graduate school. This is what you do in graduate school. Everybody drinks. Every discussion is over alcohol. Everything. You meet a professor and he goes, "Hey, how you doing? Have a beer." So all of a sudden now, everything that I've learned not to do is stuck in my face. We have what was called Pibbs Pizza. We go out after, because you gotta understand. Let me go back. For me, school was, I do school, and because I have to do school, and then I go back and do all this other stuff that I want to do. School is just this little thing. Science is this thing that you do as a job. But it actually isn't. And I think this is the challenge, particularly for minority students. And for me, when I got into this environment where it wasn't this side thing that I would just do just to learn this so I can get this degree. It actually became who I was. And so in the process of this science stuff, the transition was making this me. So that when I was waking up in the morning, I was thinking about which experiment and which problem I would have to do. When I was going to bed at night, I started thinking about which experiment I needed to do and which problem and what might happen. And so science became who I was in a way. And I think this is a really hard transition because initially it's like, oh yeah, and I kind of go to school to do science. And I'll do this, but I don't really like it, but I just need to get this degree so that I can get a job. But then you start running into problems with that mentality because you realize in order to get that job, people have to feel as if you are the science that you're presenting. That this is kind of your purpose and what you're bringing to the world. Not just, oh yes, and I will tell you, I'll be honest. My parents never went to college. They had no clue what the world I was doing or what I worked on. My mother was proud of me. She passed away when I was in graduate school. Dad was proud of me, but they had no clue what I did. They had no clue when I was going to graduate. And of course, the other question that you always get is what? Everybody knows.
When you gonna get married?
I'm gonna get married. My mother already married me off, let me tell you. I wasn't even engaged. She already said I was married. So, when you gonna get a job? You went to undergraduate, you got a job. Now you got to do this graduate thing, 2 years, right? 2 years after you go to more schooling. You get a job. And then you start explaining, and I was dumb, I admit. I was smart, but I was dumb. So like everyone knows you do a postdoc after graduate school. I didn't know that. I thought a postdoc was like post-bac. So you need a little extra training sometimes, just to, get that extra edge so you do a postdoc afterwards. And so I'm thinking graduate school is 4 years. Not the case. I'm thinking postdoc, that's extra stuff in case you want to get like above and beyond required. And so now I'm in graduate school and I'm looking at these postdocs and they go, yeah, you're going to do a postdoc? Postdoc, you crazy? Start graduate school. Lady just told me I didn't belong there. Classes are kicking my butt. Classes are all taught by the people who you read about. So I'm sitting here, I'm going, I know her, that's Carol Gross. Carol Gross. That's the lady who identifies Sigma Factor. She's a member of the National Academy of Science, because now I know what an Academy member is. Wow, this is amazing, okay. Oh, this is Mike Bishop. Mike Bishop got the Nobel Prize for discovering oncogenes. Oh, by the way, this is so-and-so. And they realized that there were over 100 members of the National Academy of Sciences in my department. The way I thought about science as a result of that changed. Because now, when I want a question or have an answer, first I do all of this background reading before I even open my mouth, so I don't walk in looking stupid. I read their papers before I walk in there, and then after that I ask a question. And the answer you get is not, how many microliters to add to so-and-so? The answer you get is the big picture. And what you want to see in science is the big picture. And my problem, I don't want to know my project. I want to know the lab's focus. Because once I know my project, I want to expand into, do I know your project? Do I know your project? You're in my lab. What do you work on? And before you know it, it's that interest in science that makes people in the lab look at you as a scientist. When it's just your project and you don't care about anybody else's project, nobody else cares about your project anymore. Science becomes this huge culture that extends beyond just you performing a project. It becomes how you fit in with the environment. So this lady just told me I don't deserve to be here, be at UCSF. After that, I take classes, and these classes kick my butt. And since I was the first one, you know, it's a liberal place, right? So people want to make sure I fit in. So out of 33 students in my class, they called me in with the Graduate Affairs Committee, and I'm sitting here with this panel of about 7 faculty members. So, Emmitt, what did you think about this class? I mean, how do you answer that? Did you find it difficult? Was it? I mean, hell yeah, it was hard. You know, and so it was one of the most uncomfortable things, them trying to help me. Where I'm sitting here literally in a corner surrounded by these, you know, when you get pledged, okay. And so I'm on the spot, and I'm just saying, everything's great. Everything's great. Why? Because one, I don't want to be a failure. And two, the other thing I didn't tell you, which is I was also told in not so many terms that if I didn't do well, they would not accept another one. So I was a representative for all black people. So how do I change? All of a sudden, for the first time in my life, I had to be different, in a different way. One, I didn't smile. I smiled, but I was, come on, you don't walk down the street in a black community going, hey, how you doing? All of a sudden, I became really jolly, which was all of a sudden I'm friendly, I'm smiling, and I have to be, because what's the first thing they do if you're black? You're angry. Mm-hmm. They're afraid of you the moment you walk in the door and you don't belong. And I became better friends with all the janitors, all the people who worked there, all the maintenance people. They're like, wow, you're a graduate student here? Wow, you're here. Oh my goodness, this is fantastic. You know, and you're friendly. Because for me, those were the real people that I could identify with and kind of have more of a connection with. Because the people in my lab who are all you know, the children of professors or married to professors, I didn't necessarily directly have a relationship or understanding of. And what I had to do was go through the process of trying to figure out what they were trying to figure out about me. So I didn't trust them because I was scared, and I was trying not to get jacked up. Because we know what happens. You get in a situation, you get jacked, and I'm the black guy. I'm going down. So how do I get out of this situation? So here I'm already feeling bad now, because for the first time someone said I don't belong, that if I don't do well, they won't accept another black person. And I'm struggling. I'm struggling. I'm struggling. My first year I did a rotation with a brother named John Watson, fantastic experience. He was one of the first faculty members at UCSF. He'd been there for 33 years, did amazing work doing biochemistry, doing fat metabolism. Next I worked with Paolo Ferro. Paolo Ferro is the guy who developed 2 gel electrophoresis, did cell cycle stuff in Drosophila, member of the National Academy of Science. And finally I did my third rotation with Ira Hershkowitz. And Ira was the guy who eventually became my thesis advisor when following this genetics. MacArthur Award Fellow, et cetera, et cetera. Got in Ira's lab, and his lab was crazy. When I say crazy, let me say.
Go for it, man.
Yeah.
So you did a rotation with Watson. He's an African American.
Yes.
You say brother.
Yes. Yes.
So naturally, so would you say? I mean, one of our scholars here just got admitted to Brown, Byron. Hey.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So would you say he should not gravitate to an African American lab if he accepts and goes there? And I mean, why did you not go with at least broader? Because then you don't have to smile a lot.
See, here's the thing. You can try to get into a silo, but in the end, you still have to deal with the rest of the world. I went to an all-black town, and so I didn't have to necessarily go out other than when I went to the grocery store or anywhere outside of that little town. And so what you have to do is see the world as it is. And I wouldn't say don't gravitate to another minority. I gravitated toward this guy because I identified with him, I could talk to him, and actually for a good first experience, and I'd known him as an undergraduate because I met him when I was in the summer program. I liked this guy, and he said, why don't you rotate in my lab? I said, absolutely, no problem. He was my first rotation project. And I was learning a lot in his lab, and I enjoyed him. I wasn't necessarily excited about the science he was doing. It wasn't my interest, per se. And so I gravitated toward things that I was really interested in. And when I did choose a lab, the lady who was advising me told me, don't go to that lab, because that lab is all type 1 personalities. Everybody's really, really experienced and bright in that lab. And I think you'll find it very difficult to succeed. I will say that this same lady later on, who was my advisor, came on just as I was graduating and said, I knew that would be the perfect place for you. Because she assumed that I would remember what she told me. She also suggested that instead of going to science, maybe considering how many people I knew in the city, that maybe I could consider being a principal at a school, a high school or something like that, because I could really make a significant impact. And I just smiled. I said, I'll keep that in mind.
But so I think this is, for our scholars, this is really important also because we're dealing with a situation now. One of our former scholars is at an Ivy League school. She passed her candidacy exam, she's done all of that, but she's in a lab where no one talks to her. And so she's really stressed out and she's about ready to leave. So this type A thing that you brought up, I think this is, I mean, did you care about that? Or,
Yes.
or when you went to RS lab, you said you just ignored the type A aspect?
You can't ignore it. I would tell you, honestly, graduate school was the best and the absolute worst time in my life. And why? It's because, yes, I'm in graduate school, I'm around these great people. I absolutely did things outside of science. So Zachary Mackey, for example, he and I played basketball every year I was there. We won the 3-on-3 championship there every year, the entire time I played. 5-on-5, 3 out of the several years I was there. I was involved in organizations, the Black Student Health Alliance. I was president of the Black Student Health Alliance, which is the umbrella program for SNAPA, Student National Pharmacy Association, Student National Dental Association, Student National Medical Association, and the Student Nursing Association. I stayed involved because, for me, science just doesn't work. 90% of your experiments will not work. And you live for the 10%. Because it's a roller coaster. You go, oh, everything's dropping, and then finally you go, woo, this is fantastic, I love science, God, this sucks. Woo, I love science, God, this sucks. And literally that is the roller coaster that you go in science. And so you have to have somewhat one of either masochistic personality, or two, you have to find other things that you also enjoy. So regardless of whether my experiment didn't work, I just won a basketball game, dude. Something in my life is going well. And so I really try to balance things based on not just science. Science was critical, it was who I was, it's what I did, but I was more than just science. I also did things outside of there that kept me personally happy. And you like it when you experiment, but it just doesn't happen most of the time. You don't know when you're going to graduate. That's the most frustrating thing in the world. Like, when are you going to graduate? Mom, stop asking me when I'm going to graduate. And so, in terms of environment, there were situations, my lab, I had a lab of about 20 people for graduate school, 35 when I was a postdoc. 23 people in the lab. One side of the lab hates the other side of the lab. I'm not getting in your mess. I sat in the middle. I'm not in it. And because I didn't choose a side, nobody talked to me. Which didn't help at all. It just made things worse. And so I would go to ask people, I said, oh, by the way, I noticed that you did so-and-so, can you tell me how to do it? Go read about it. Like, oh, I'm supposed to be here to learn how to do science from senior people. Go read about it. Actually, one of the people in the lab scooped me. I got scooped 3 times as a graduate student. First time my 4th year, I started over completely. Group at Harvard, at Stanford, and at Cosby Harvard. I'd identified the master regulator of mitosis. been working on this project the time I was there. I thought I was going to graduate, working like a dog. I'm going to get out of here in 4 years. I'm going to get out of UCSF, out of here, moving on to my next job. They accidentally found everybody always sent my boss their stuff when they were, publishing things. So he calls me to the office, and I was just telling Ed about this. And I think I told Roberto about this yesterday. He called me to the office, and he says, Emmitt, I got some good news, and I got some bad news. I'm like, give me the bad news. Because, I like to get bad news first, then I feel good from the good news. And I walk away feeling good. So I said, give me the bad news. He said, show me the draft. It was everything that I had done, plus. So there was no recovery from that. So I'm going, this is shooting me now. What am I going to do? This is everything. What I do? I've never been in this situation before. What do I do? What does this have to do with me graduating? Because this is what's on my mind. I gotta get this degree and get out of here. Because for me, it's a degree thing. I get out of here because these people are crazy. And he goes, well, yeah, they seem to have, and they beat us to it. They did a really good paper here, so and so. So I said, okay. Well, what's the good news? At least you know you were right. I don't want to be right. I want you and everybody else to see it in the paper and they know I'm right. Because right now, nobody knows that I'm right. When you read the paper, my name's not on there. I don't care how right I am. I might have predicted, the next Holocaust, but my name's not on it. My name is not Nostradamus. Nostradamus wrote it and he got it published. I can say it, but nobody knows my name. So, now I got to go back. He gives me a week to figure out what I want to do next in terms of research. So I go back and I decide, well, the lab has started this process in meiosis, and he said, well, it'd be good if you could work on meiosis. And so I started working on, we had just done one of the very first microarray papers. Joe DeRisi, who was a major guy who pushed microarrays and gene expression analysis, became faculty at UCSF. We had known him as a graduate student when he was at Stanford and Pat Brown's lab. And so he came over, he's now a MacArthur Award Fellow. He just got inducted into the National Academies this last round. Young guy, martial artist like me, and just really nice guy. So he's there. They had just done all these arrays showing the response to the environment and yeast. So okay, I'll take this and I'll start working on meiosis. So I started working on meiosis, naturally regulated meiosis, looking at how this thing binds DNA, regulates over 150 genes. And my boss and I, at this point, I will tell you, I changed the moment I got scooped. Right after that, I changed. The way I thought about science changed completely. Because my mentality about science was I work hard, I get a result. And what I realized that in science, it's not just about working hard. You can work hard and somebody else can beat you to it, and you're just jacked. And so how do I put myself in a position where I don't want to get jacked? Because it hurts. It hurts when you think you're going to be successful, and then it just slips out from under you, and you can't do anything about it. So I will tell you, at that point, I became an expert in alternative careers in science. So all of a sudden, I knew everything you want to know about intellectual property law. I knew everything you want to know about science writing. I knew everything you wanted to know about going to marketing and to business development and all of the business sides of science. And of course, the standard thing that everybody talked about was to go in industry, which nobody really knows what they talked about. They just say go into industry, which means nothing.
What does that mean, though?
Exactly. What does that mean?
No. In your mind, what is it?
So when you go to industry, the first thing is you have to ask, are you talking industry biotech? Are you talking industry pharmaceutical? Based on industry pharmaceutical, if you want to go to either one of you, have to develop a technique. Which means the reason when they hire people is not just because you have a PhD, they hire you because you have a specific technique that their company wants. And you have to demonstrate that you can bring that technique to the company. And generally, particularly for biotech, that's exactly what they're looking for. So the idea of shifting to industry, you have to decide which industry you want to go to, what type of industry you want to go to, and what specific type of company you're going to gear your CV so that you'll be successful. You don't just jump in the industry. Then you get disappointed. And so you really want to strategize where you want to go and give yourself at least a year or two to get there. So that's what I mean by really, what does it mean to go into industry? Really know which industry you're getting into. So, back to graduate school, my 4th year, start doing meiosis, start getting things done. One of the ladies didn't really want to help me who worked in meiosis, so I had to figure out how this thing works. All she pretty much did is fuss. Oh, what are you doing? This is stupid, so and so. Okay. Try it again. And so, all of a sudden, I started getting data. Identified DNA binding regions, activation regions, looking at binding sites. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll get a minor paper on this, something that my boss would actually publish, because he doesn't publish small papers. And so I'm getting excited. My boss gets sick, gets pancreatic cancer. Now, just before that, things are going. He gets sick, diagnosed with that. Just before that, the guy who actually, my biology high school instructor, teacher, who had actually given me a microscope and things when I was in high school, I liked biology as a result of it, he dies. Okay, wow, celebrity died, that's sad. I'm going through this drama, trying to get this PhD. Here's a guy who was sitting here helping me out as a biologist, he's dead. Okay. So now my thesis advisor is sick. The year before that, what I didn't mention is my mother, who was one of my biggest advocates, dies while I'm in graduate school. So I get school, my mother dies. Now I'm going, this is, you know what I want to say. All of this. Because I got into science. My mother had lupus and scleroderma. So I started off with the idea that I was going to do autoimmune diseases. So and I was convinced that learn how to do basic science first, because immunologists generally don't know the basic science. Learn basic biology, shift over to immunology, you'll be a much more powerful immunologist. So my strategy was learning this basic genetics about chemistry, and then shifting this to use this to learn immunology, which is a completely different thing altogether, and then put the two together so that I can study autoimmune diseases. After my mother passed, I lost all interest in autoimmune diseases. I don't study autoimmune diseases. I haven't read a paper on any autoimmune disease since. And during this time, I had to rethink, why am I doing this? Roberto asked me, man, why'd you stick with it? And part of the reason was, as I'm feeling terrible with all of the things going around me, all of a sudden I got this terrible environment, I got these terrible people. Fortunately, I had a girlfriend who still liked me. But all of this stuff just wasn't working. And in the end, you have to find it yourself to decide who you are. You have to think about what got you to this point, because in your trajectory in life, there are all of these things that should have gone wrong so that you should be where you are even at this point right now. Think about all the stuff that could have just happened that would have stopped. You go, man, I remember this situation, I was young, and so-and-so like, I should have been dead. Or if this so-and-so, I needed some help, and somebody happened to be there right at that moment that I needed help to get me to this point that got me to where I'm at right now. And when you look at the multiplicity of events, these random events that tend to happen to get you to where you are, you start thinking, I gotta make this happen. And sometimes the this that you're at might not be what you're supposed to do. Maybe it's setting you up for your next step. And so I'm trying to put all this together. At that point, you pray then, Lord, help me. I mean, remember that TV show, help me, help you. I was like, Lord, help me. Just help me. And all of a sudden, I started getting hits. Things that helped me feel better. I became this expert on alternative careers in science. I started meeting people. Guy says, hey, I got a buddy of mine. He's looking for a scientist. He's a brother. He runs a patent law office, and he really wants somebody to take over. Guy meets me. Guy lives on the top house in the Berkeley Hills, looking down over. Here's the Golden Gate Bridge. Here's the Bay Bridge. This guy has a creek running through his house, and little goldfish and stuff swimming down there. And I'm going, that's what I want. He goes, I talked to him, and after one conversation, let me tell you, when I was in Montgomery, I didn't tell you one job that I had. I used to sell artwork. So I did a lot of stuff. I would sell black art, Black Jesus art in the white community.
What is Black Jesus?
Black Jesus in the white community. Black Santa Clauses. And I just sell this art, and people, if you could sell that in Montgomery, Alabama, I can sell anything. So I'm talking to this guy, and I'm like, I'm selling myself now. By the time I finish, he's like, I want you to work for me. When you're done, you're here, you're guaranteed a job. I'm starting at 125. Don't worry about law school, that's taken care of. I want to put you I want to put you right here in the hills. I'm like, you got me, dog. And so at that point, I was clear. I was going to patent law. So I got one connection. He's like, and then here's a brother. The guy gets flown to Italy to go buy Ferraris. I'm going, oh. He said, yeah, there are only so many Ferraris they allow in any area. And so basically you have to fly out and get it custom. And if there are too many Ferraris in the area, they won't let you buy one. I didn't know that. Why would I even know that? So now I'm getting this whole concept of patent law. So during the same time, I'm kind of getting involved in business. A friend of mine starts a tech company. And so I'm going, okay, I need to know how this works. One of the deans I happen to know really well. And here's this weird thing. In this terrible environment, I happen to know all the people in charge. The dean of the graduate school was head of the summer program that I was in. Got to know him really well. The chancellor, the guy who became the chancellor, Mike Bishop, I happened to meet when I was an undergraduate in the summer program. Got to be good friends, so I could just walk into his office. Matter of fact, he asked me to be the student representative, not the Student Government Association person. Asked me to be the speaker for him for his inauguration as chancellor. So here I am standing next to Condoleezza Rice. And the two of us are walking, talking about just random stuff, and, you know, minorities and science, and here she is. This is before she got in politics. She's at Stanford, president of the university system. You know, during this time, I had some great things happen. I got asked to speak for the Surgeon General, who at the time was his brother. I got asked if Willie Brown would have to be mayor of San Francisco. Willie Brown and I spoke together, or right behind each other, 4 times while I was in San Francisco. And I ended up meeting just some amazing people. And so while graduate school was kicking my butt, I was doing other things that, I'm not that big. Something's working. Well now, here I'm getting scooped. I'm starting getting things done. People are passing that are important to me. I'm still going, because now I realize that if I get this degree, then once I got it, I can choose to not use it for the rest of my life. But now I got it. And I can see what I can do with it. I could have taken another out. I will tell you, I'll tell you right now. You tell your faculty members, I don't want to do academic science, I want to go to industry, they will give you a buyout. They will not push you as hard, and they will let you graduate early. You wonder why? Because as long as you don't apply to an academic job, they'll say, okay, he'll be good in industry, or she'll be good in industry, and so on. But if you say you want to do an academic job, they're going to make you do stuff like you're going to be in the academic. You're going to get a straight up full degree, and they're going to push you. And I could have easily said, look, I'm going to patent law committee. This paper doesn't even matter to me. It doesn't help me at all. But instead, what I said is, no. I'm the first black person going through here. I'm not going out like that. And so I wanted to get everything hard, and they beat the crap out of me. I wasn't even front. Second time, I'm about to graduate. Now I know I'm set. I had done everything my committee asked me to do. Now, let me go back. I had another interview. There are no jobs. The job industry's gone in crap in California. You had the dot-com bomb. Everything's no money. I'm trying to figure out, how do I get a job? So I call up. No jobs. I call up. I go to the phone book. I'm getting me a patent law job somehow. I'm getting me a job. Other than this brother over here, in case he decides to flip, because you gotta have a backup plan. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Phone book. I just called law firm up. It's Intellectual Law. Hello, my name is Emmitt. I'm so at the University of California, San Francisco. I'm trying to talk to somebody, see if I can get some information about the intellectual property process. They'll call you back. Eventually, I talked to a couple of people. Got one guy, said he would call me back. I said, okay, this guy's gonna call me back. He's a partner in the firm. This guy called me back. Man, I got in the salesman mode. Boom! And by the way, I'm so-and-so, blah, 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 so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. I started name dropping. Because the people that I met at UCSF, I became friends with some faculty members. You gotta know who has your back. And that's really, really important in science. So like Liz Blackburn, got my back. Liz Blackburn was the lady who discovered telomerase. She got the Nobel Prize 3 years ago for identifying telomerase and how it extends the ends of telomeres. Happened to find, I started talking about her and our relationship when she was sitting on my committee at the time and all of these things. Talking to him about this and what I'm working on and who I'm working with. And he said, you know something, I don't have a job for you. But I know the person who you should talk to. There's a lady in our Palo Alto office, and she's considered the Johnny Carson of intellectual property law. Well, I'm gonna set up a meeting so you can talk to her. I'm going, oh, look out! Get on the phone, talk to her. Next thing you know, I had an interview for a job. I get to the job, and this lady, her administrative assistant goes, I don't know who you know, but this is the fastest person, this is the fastest time I've seen anybody ever come here for a job. So I'm going, I don't know nobody. Get up in there, and I wooed her. I'd been come to find out that she had actually worked with Liz when she was a graduate student at Stanford. Get up in there, talk to her. Next thing you know, I'm ready to have my thesis committee meeting. I know everything's done. Just before I have the meeting, I get a paper that comes out that scooped half of my stuff. Half of it's gone. It's already published. Which means I can't publish what I have now. Going to my committee meeting, and I'm going, what do I do? I tell them what happened. They said, well, you can't graduate. Because you can't publish this. Now I'm broke. I am just done. So this is Friday. Monday I get a call from them saying, congratulations, you got the job. Pending completion of your degree.